was a part of the story, I went through and I was over 400 pounds and read Dr. Osborne's book, got inspired and got educated or re-educated in the fitness world and dropped 200 pounds and went from a size 62 down to a 34. So, thank you so much, Dr. Osborne.
Forget about the medications. Those things further accelerate the process, of course. But the most important thing you can do is become habituated to exercise, and in particular, strength training, right? You can't walk around the block and expect yourself to gain muscle. It's not going to happen. And I always tell people, walking does not supplant strength training, ever. The most important thing you can do as far as from the physicality standpoint, of your body, is to amass. Your insulin level is going to go straight up. And this is what I talk to people about when I'm in the clinic, their first time. They come in, they're obese, they don't understand what's going on, right? If you just understand the macronutrient content of your food and understand what insulin does, insulin goes up when you have sugar, insulin stays down when you have proteins and fats, okay? It may spike up a little bit with the protein, and insulin stays down when you're eating the low glycemic index carbohydrates. So understand the effects of the effects of your food on your insulin. One of the issues with them, as I'm sure you're well aware of, is the fact that people overutilize them or use them sort of in an unapologetically aggressive manner and end up, as you had alluded to, losing weight as opposed to losing fat. And the differentiator between those two, as you know, is skeletal muscle.
And welcome to the Apex Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Bob GDMD, and I'm here as always with my co-host.
That is me. How are you today, Bob?
I'm fantastic. We just caught off an unbelievable event that we did here in the office yesterday.
Bob, it was next level. The king himself, DMC of Run DMC, Daryl McDaniels was here for a great event and sold all the cookies. It sold out. It was a great day. And Bob, your dental office, as a podcast, had a major cookie event, sold out. Tremendous job, Bob.
Thanks, thank you. So today, we have a really inspiring guest. Actually, it's inspired me on my journey and to create the Apex Lifestyles podcast. I have Dr. Brett Osborne here. He wrote a book, Get Serious, and I read it one time, and I guess it was like in 18 or 19, something like that. I think it was 18. It was 2018. I read the book, and I decided that it was time to make a change.
And boy, did you make a change, Bob.
I did. That was part of the story, I went through and I was over 400 pounds and read Dr. Osborne's book, got inspired and got educated or re-educated in the fitness world and dropped 200 pounds and went from a size 62 down to a 34. So, thank you so much, Dr. Osborne.
That is impressive. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad. I'm glad it works for some people. No, it works for everyone as long as you just are willing to follow the science. It's simply a function of attention to detail, as it is with what we do, right? Whether it's dentistry or neurosurgery, whatever it is.
Neurosurgery, right?
It doesn't matter. If you're attentive, you commit your attention to doing something, it will be realized. That's it.
Yeah, it ends up being like a lot of push-aways from the table, really, at the end of the day.
Right.
And that's the other thing I want to talk about a little bit. Like, this was not so much about fat loss. I didn't want to look like Jared from Subway when I was done. I didn't want to look like a deflated version of myself. I actually wanted to look like The Rock. I want to look like the cover of you on your book. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. And it's more about fat loss than it is about weight loss, and learning how to manipulate those compartments to be able to, get the result you're looking for.
That's correct. One of the problems nowadays, as I'm sure you're very, very well aware of, is the fact that a very large percentage of Americans are on one of the incretins. So you can call it semaglutide or liraglutide or Mounjaro, call it whatever you want. The problem with those medications, and we've been using them for years, like 4 or 5, long before the Kardashians got a hold of them and Elon Musk and everything else. We've been using them for quite a while, so our experience is vast. And one of the issues with them, as I'm sure you're well aware of, is the fact that people overutilize them or use them sort of in an unapologetically aggressive manner, and end up, as you had alluded to, losing weight as opposed to losing fat. And, the differentiator between those two, as you know, is skeletal muscle. And one of the underpinnings of the book, as you, I'm sure remember, and I'm sure you preach to your patients, is that muscle is extraordinarily protective of the body. So our head injured patients, as an example, and all I do now is neurosurgical trauma, so brain and spine trauma. I can tell you, if you were to take two people and you take one person that is sort of a skinny fat or a fat person, okay, and you take a person that is more, has got some stock to them, is more muscular, and you give them these and you subject them to the same trauma, the person that's going to live undoubtedly is that person who's got some stock, who's got some muscle. I always tell people that your muscle is your resilience or your resistance against disease. The weight loss, fat loss thing is very, very, very important. I'm glad you realized that early on in your journey.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it was about the aesthetic for me more than anything. But
fair enough.
And I also thought, I had a background in biochemistry and a little bit of physiology, and obviously, right, because what I do. And back in the day, I used to be a personal trainer, so I knew how to lift. I knew how to I rode crew collegiately.
Oh, that's great. How tall are you? Because I'm 5'0".
Yeah, I'm 5'10" actually, so
I was short.
5'10". Yeah, I was short for a crew. You know what
I
mean?
I was going to say that's still short for an oarsman, but nevertheless, you're 3 inches taller than me.
Well, my partner Dennis, how tall are you, Dennis? Tell everybody.
6'5".
Oh man, so you need to get into a shell, or at least get on the ergometer and show Bob how it's done.
Rip.
Holy cow!
Yeah, he could rip, right? So.
Oh my God,
Dr. Osborne, just to kind of go off this a little bit.
Oh yeah, you actually did an amazing transformation yourself, Dennis.
About 5 months ago, actually, a little over 5 months ago, Bob challenged his office, which my wife works at the office, to get involved in an 8-week transformation. And since December 15th, I've actually lost 70 pounds.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
You know what the thing is? Right now, my wife and I are in the middle of the tail end of a 75 hard, but it's
not really much of a fan, but okay. And I'll tell you why after, but yeah, okay.
But it's a way of life. Just working out, eating right, and I don't feel like we're dieting.
Right, and I would say that if it teaches you nothing else, it teaches you that. I'm not a fan of things like that. It's sort of reminiscent of CrossFit. Not a fan at all, because these types of protocols, which are extraordinarily aggressive, they don't allow for enough recovery. And they're almost dismissive, by virtue of that, of injury and injury potential. So if you've gotten through that, kudos to you, because you've obviously paid attention to things like that. Made sure you had adequate rest, make sure your nutrition is sound. But I will tell you that a lot of people who go through that type of protocol or do CrossFit habitually end up getting injured. How do I know? Because I take care of them. That's why, there's some little digs in the book, Bob, you may remember about CrossFit, and how you
I'm
can
not
race
a fan of CrossFit.
Racing to do deadlifts, 40 deadlifts in 60 seconds or whatever it is.
They're going to come see you for an L5 issue, right?
You're racing to the ER. You're going to hurt yourself. There's no question about it. But nevertheless, Dennis, it's good that you were able to do that, and kudos to you. If it's, like I said, if it's been nothing else, for you, it's taught you that, health is truly just, it's a lifestyle, and there's not really much more to it. It's not a transient thing. You don't just do health for 6 months and then you just leave it alone. That's not the way it works.
Well, it's interesting. I had my hip replaced last summer. I was on prednisone for years, and I'm sure some wear and tear on it. Yeah. And, at 51 years old now, not being healthy isn't going to be a way to have a healthy lifestyle moving forward. And I feel better than I have in 30 years. It's incredible.
Of course. Being unhealthy that's a bad long-term plan.
Yeah. So one of the things for me when, I was dealing with an A1C when I started this at 8.2. My last one was 4.9, by the way.
There you go. And good for you.
No metformin, none of that.
That's impressive, actually, without metformin.
Yeah. So what I did was I was thinking, I just need to build a bigger sink. Right. So I actually put on, I ended up I used some DEXA scans to make sure I was going in the right direction. And it looks like I put on probably 30 pounds or remembered 30 pounds of muscle.
No, good for you. Good
so
for you.
Over four, almost 5 years. But
yeah, no. But I mean, that's terrific. The way to do it, obviously, and this is you glean this from the book, obviously, and it's how I sort of exist is by making sure that you're doing a lot of big compound anabolic movements, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, a chin up, a pull up. These are staples. They've made men and women strong for eons. They will continue to do that. By virtue of doing those exercises, you will be a different human, right? Because you're leaving your body nowhere to run, right?
For sure.
You're standing on your 300, 400, 500 pounds, during a squat. You are forcing your body to grow.
Yes, for sure. One of the things that I noticed is when the weight came off, I ended up with quadzilla, because I was actually, every time I would sit down and stand back up, right? I was doing a squat with like 200 or 300 pounds on my frame with nothing on it.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's actually pretty crazy to see that. But yeah, one of the things that I wanted to really do was to build a bigger sink, so like my carbohydrates could go somewhere. Right. And I needed to make sure that my metabolism was fixed. And if you don't have lean tissue, like, you don't have a metabolism, really. I mean,
you're 100% correct. So, in our office, we do in-body scale studies on people. Everybody that comes through there initially and annually, or however often they'd like, are going to get anthropometry or screening. And one of the first things that I tell them is, look, you see where your BMR is over here? It's in like the upper right, of the readout. Yeah. That is a function of your skeletal muscle mass. So one of the ways that we can sort of, like I say, it's haphazard, or sort of one of the ways that we can make a determination as to whether or not somebody is metabolically efficient, metabolically optimal. I have a lot of special operations guys in my clinic, and a lot of these guys sort of, qualify, is you take your body weight, right, and you multiply that times 10. And Bob, you could do this. If you go back to your DEXA studies that you had said, you can probably actually no, because your DEXA study is not going to have it. I was thinking about a bod pod. You need to get a BMR measurement, right? So you're going to get a BMR measurement, and you're going to take your body weight and multiply that times 10. If your BMR is higher than that number, so say as an example you weigh 190. I'm just making it up, right? 190 multiply times 10, you get 1900. If your BMR is higher than that, right, that means the majority of you, okay, about 50% in a male, is made up of metabolically active tissue.
Active tissue,
fat,
yeah, makes sense.
So that's that 10 times multiplier. It's something that I just noticed over, years taking care of thousands of patients. I've noticed that 10-time ratio. Now, for people that are watching, the opposite is true as well. So we have somebody in our clinic that just, let's say, weighs 400 pounds, right? And we do get these guys, right? They're 400 pounds. Their BMR oftentimes is 2,000 calories, right? Why?
Yep.
Because they have relatively no muscle. And they'll come in and they'll be 35% muscle. We want our males to be 50% muscle, right? So if you were to check your skeletal muscle mass relative to your body weight, say as an example, you weigh 200 pounds, I'm making it up. Okay, 200 pounds, you want 100 pounds of skeletal muscle
100 pounds of muscle.
Women, we know, again, this is anecdotal, but it's more than anecdotal. There's thousands of patients, okay? If you are about 45%, 46%, you are really, 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 optimal as far as amount of skeletal muscle you should have for a given body weight. So 45, 46% for a female, and it's time tested. It's very, very, very reproducible. So those are two little barometers that we use, of health that are based upon the anthropometry measurements. And anybody that's watching, you don't need to get on an in-body scale. You go do a bod pod. You can tons of things you can do.
Any of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you putting people on, when you're doing caloric deficit, or you let's say you found that person that's at 2,000 calorie BMR, right? Are you doing like, a couple hundred calorie deficit over time and then dropping it as they drop?
So you're talking about the person who weighs 400 pounds? Who are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, the person's weighing 400 pounds and their BMR is 2,000, like what,
Yeah. Remember, my initial sort of reaction to them or response is I get them in the room and of course I read them the Riot Act, right? And I tell them, listen, what's going to kill you, what's going to take 10 years off of your life is your obesity or your morbid obesity, right? So that's like class 3, obesity. I mean, it's like way up there. Okay. Anyway, so my goal at that point, and I don't like putting people in caloric deficit. So when you said that, it was like the you're scratching the chalkboard with her nails.
Yeah.
Because I don't talk about calories. I talk about macronutrients. And the calories are built in, as you know, right? So, yes, we are
totally
creating
talk
a
about
deficit.
The macronutrients.
I'm talking about
too.
for people that are sort of,
basis
they
of
just
what
need
I
to lose
did
10
to get
pounds.
where I was.
There's a slight deficit, but what I usually will do is set those patients. So let me start there. I will set those patients eucaloric to their BMR. Say, as an example, they're 2,000 calories and they need to lose 5 or 10 pounds. I'll put them at 2,000 calories and I'll let them generate a deficit by virtue of
exercise.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. So because remember, we got to support the muscle. So I don't really want them in deficit. However, the people that I want in deficit are the people who weigh 400 pounds because they're going to die tomorrow, potentially. You see, it's like the next shoe to drop. They're on the precipice of a disaster. So I am unapologetically aggressive, okay, about how do I take a 400-pound person who's habitually bad, right? In other words, eating-wise, right? Has terrible habits, right? Else they would be 400 pounds. How do I take them, into that aggressive deficit? And it is aggressive. It's very simple. Before we had access to incretins, right? So again, semaglutide, liraglutide, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the GLP-1s.
I would be, sort of coaching these patients up and trying to teach them what they should be eating, what they shouldn't be eating. And I would set them, if they were 2,000 calories, if they're 400 pounds and they're 2,000 calories, I probably would set them not too crazy low. It may be just, let's say 1,750, maybe even 2,000, and let them exercise and create a little bit of a deficit that way. And then just continually watch them and surveil them just to make sure that they were having the appropriate fat loss. Of course, I was also sort of cheating a little bit by putting them on metformin. So you know me with metformin. I mean, nearly everybody's on metformin. So I would drive their insulin levels down by virtue of that and put them in a fat burning state, and then put them on a macronutrient protocol with, again, 1,750, 2,000 calories, something like that, and make sure that I don't cause them, too much grief by virtue of the fact that their carbohydrate loads are going to be far lower than they were previously.
Right.
So I would.
So what? Yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is I would definitely not start somebody like that on 75 grams of carbohydrates a day. I would start somebody like that on probably 150 because what's going to happen is that the physiology is going to go nuts when we deplete the carbohydrates.
Yeah.
We're already changing the glycemic index of the carbohydrates, but these people are used to running their bodies on Skittles and Snickers bars, right?
So I had done a prep last summer for a competition, and I went down. The lowest I went down was 50 grams for the last week.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, I just coached a guy. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. He doesn't care that I'm going to show you because I put it up on Facebook, and he'll be very proud of his accomplishments. But I'm going to show you something that we did with a guy who he's a friend of mine. He comes and trains with us every once in a while, or he's really a friend of a friend. And I asked him, his name is Wendy. I said, Wendy, when was the last time you were, and it's not as impressive as yours, but it just is a testimony to the fact that you can do this if you are really, really, really attentive to the details. And in particular, as you're tapering off for a fitness show or a competition, whatever you're doing, you drop the carbohydrates down, keep yourself eucaloric to your BMR, right? So you compensate by increasing the fats, right? Which are not going to have anything to do with your insulin levels. They're not going to drive your insulin levels up or down. They're just going to stabilize them. And you just eat adequate amounts of proteins.
What does that mean to you? Yeah, what are you putting people at protein-wise? What's your range?
So look at this guy. So this is my friend Wendy. And never in his entire life. Can you see that? Okay. Yep. So you see what it looks like there?
Yeah.
So Wendy's about 27, 28 years old. Okay. Never in his entire life has he been able to lose that. Okay. Body fat. Okay. Particularly around the waistline there. So and I asked about his parents. He's a carbohydrate sensitive individual. And there are a lot of people out there, okay, who are like that. I run naturally lean. So people always say, how'd you get the abs? And I go, I've always been very, very lean. But let me just show you what is
he looked like he was maybe 25% there.
Correct.
Like that.
That's right. Okay. So what did I do? I set his macronutrients. I got his BMR, and I think he probably weighed 215 there, something like that. He's about 6 feet. So about 215 or so. And what I'll do is figure his BMR was probably, maybe like, I don't know, probably 1900 because he was not, very metabolically efficient. Didn't have that 50% muscle, not even close. right? So 1900. I probably put him at like 100 grams of fat, which would be 900 calories. And I probably set his initial carbohydrates at 75 or 100, right around there. So that would be if we set him at 100, 1300, and then another 500 of protein. So yeah, so about 125, 135 of protein. So 135 of protein, about 100 grams of fat, and carbohydrates were probably 75, 100 grams, something like that. And then over time, and it took about 4 months. Again, he's on no drugs. He's not a patient of mine. I had him on DHEA. Right? And I started him out on 50, and I put him up to 100 milligrams just to support as a pro-hormone his testosterone. Put him on berberine.
Yeah, did you check him before and after?
Yeah, oh my God, no, I'm going to show you. Yeah. So I put him on berberine. So berberine is like a natural metformin, okay? Just, you know.
Insulin sensitivity increases, all that,
Correct, right? And, you know, we just kept bringing him down, changing his macros, bringing his fat up, and bringing his carbohydrates down. I may have manipulated protein a little bit, but for the most part, I did not, until the last week or two, make him hypocaloric at all. Okay, so he came back to the office every month or every 3 weeks or so, and we were just checking his BMR, and I would rewrite his macros, and they were just slowly changing in fat, lower carbohydrates, protein stayed about the same. So that's him on stage.
Wow.
That's impressive. Unbelievable.
Amazing.
That is no drugs. That is no nothing except manipulation of macronutrients. So you guys both did the exact same. You guys both did the exact same thing, right? You did. That's how you lost your weight. But this is just goes to show you what you are capable of. You know, at any age, if you again, you're diverting your attention. You know, it's focused attention. You know, on things like your macronutrients, to the point where this guy be very, very disciplined in his entire existence is very disciplined. You know, track the macronutrients. He knew exactly what he ate for breakfast, exactly what he ate for lunch, for dinner, protein, exactly the water. And we manipulated the water at the end, obviously, to get him to look like that. And that's another whole discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
But nevertheless, he did great. And here's the thing. That was about, that was April 1st. So we're about a month out. Yesterday he texted me and he said that he's still running around. This, believe it or not, is about 12% body fat, right? And he's still running around 12%. That's not 6. That's not 5. People think, well, that's really, no.
I actually I kind of like living around 14, 15, believe it or not.
Which is, I'm sure, very, very, very comfortable. And it's probably, and I'm talking about
easy.
Right. It's not that difficult to maintain.
Right, for sure.
Correct.
100%.
Individuals that come in that are in some pretty bad shape. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned earlier, that you need to be aggressive in the treatment.
Yes.
How do you balance that in your approach where you want to make them feel good about themselves as they're getting ready to do the journey? It would seem like it'd be a balancing act where you have to worry about their, how they are psychologically and how they're going to get through this.
Right. And it's an excellent question. And what we do, and again, we're unapologetically aggressive about pretty much everything there, because that's how sort of neurosurgeons are, where there's a sense of urgency and it's, we believe what we believe, right or wrong. We believe what we believe. But one of the ways that we cater to our patients in that regard is multiple touch points throughout the year. So depending upon sort of what tiering, you come into the practice, right? It is a very, very, at base level, you're touched, if you will. There's a contact, with somebody every 6 weeks via phone call. And there'll be medical personnel on the phone, a very, very minimum of every 3 months. So somebody's going to reach out to you, ask how you're doing, how are you feeling, do you need anything, can we provide anything to you? This is not a sales thing. We are genuinely interested in our patients. They're like our family. We always tell them that. We always tell them, welcome to the family, when they're leaving the office, because it's true. We want to know every little thing about them as much as they're willing to share. And again, we are unapologetically sort of probing and, in a good way, invasive, because we want to make sure that we're not missing anything and that they're sharing everything with us so that we can potentially turn the knobs and the dials to better their health and better their life. So it's a minimum of 6 weeks with a non-medical personnel, every 6 weeks, and then every 3 months. It's sort of I'll call it the lower tier of programs that we have. And then if you get sort of like this elite package, then not only are you getting phone calls every 6 weeks from non-medical personnel and every 12 weeks to go over your labs, right? But you're also getting a phone call from me every month. So there's a lot of touch points, and by virtue of that, a lot of accountability, and by virtue of that, a lot of stick-to-itiveness, and by virtue of that, a lot of, or part and parcel of that is a lot of sort of psychological support, if you will.
You know, I should have prefaced this when we talked. I come from I've been an educator for 30 years. You get all facets of it. And that's why you're such a success. So thank you for explaining everything such.
I appreciate that, Dennis. When I heard of it, I do appreciate that. Yeah, you know, again, you know, this is what we're passionate about, and you know, our goal is to, you know, sort of almost, you know, get in bed with these folks, and we want them to be, you know, part of our family. I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So I was going to talk to you about, I mean, I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, you're a neurosurgeon, but you run a practice doing, is it kind of like functional medicine? Is that what you're doing there? And some facial aesthetics, things like that?
Yeah, the aesthetics, I would say, is 1% of it. It's very, very, very small. And basically what we're doing, it's you know, we sort of bill it, if you will, as concierge longevity medicine, and that would be what it falls under the guise of, right? So you can tell it's very, very concierge. The office is extremely high end. It looks like a spa, like out of Las Vegas. You should see it. And you know, we want people to be comfortable there, to want to come to the doctor's office. We don't want it to be a sterile, white, you know, put offish, you know, type of, I'm scared. It is not like that. It is very homey and very, very comfortable. And, you know, we put people through the paces there. You know, we're taking a look at them, you know, with like what I call a variety of lenses. So we're doing carotid ultrasounds, thyroid, echocardiogram. We're doing vascular reactivity testing. We're doing an RMR breathing test with respiratory quotient. So we can tell people how much of their metabolism or how much of their ATP is from carbohydrate versus fat. Obviously, we don't want people running their bodies on Skittles. We want people running their body on olive oil, right? Or abdominal fat, right? So we can see that. We do cognitive testing there. There's a whole host of lenses that we're looking at an individual through. And then, so that testing takes about 2.5 hours. Then we spend about 2.5 hours with them discussing the results and formulating a plan, a long-term plan with them, which is, again, revisited every 12 weeks when they get repeat labs, right? And I forgot that. You know, there's obviously a very, very large battery of blood work that we do. So the first visit, regardless of the tiering, you know, for our longevity medicine practice, is about 5 to 6 hours. It's long.
Wow.
It's a haul. Okay. This is not
that's fantastic, though.
Yeah, this is not 15 minutes and you're out of there. You know exactly what's wrong with you, or exactly not what's wrong with you, by the time you leave the clinic. And then, like I said, there's labs every 12 weeks, and then you come back at the year mark, and we see how you're done. Now, of course, you're always welcome to come back to the office. If you want to train at the office, it's all bundled in, right? So we have a really cool...
Talk about that. Talk about that.
Sure.
That's pretty new. That's pretty awesome. Like, I think that's maybe, Dennis, that's the next thing we're going to do is build a gym on here, right? You know?
Anything's possible.
Right?
And you should, because my girls use it, right? And obviously, when you have people that are, sort of investing in themselves, you know, from a professional standpoint, you want to give them everything that you possibly can, every sort of opportunity for them to better themselves, right? So what better way to do that aside from coaching them up as far as their nutrition and getting them in a gym, right? And when you get them in the gym, not only are they looking at themselves better, you know, there's this confidence and their brain works better. They're more productive, right? They're more productive. So to answer your question, Bob, what we have in the facility there, contrary to what is in the book, and you don't know this about me, and you wouldn't be able to know that, glean this from reading the book, is there is a high intensity facility in the office. So if you've been in this space for a while, you know what high intensity training is. I'm not talking about the nonsense that you see on the internet now, sure. HIIT and all this other stuff. I'm talking about true
No,
high
I know what
intensity
you mean.
training. Arthur Jones Nautilus.
I know what you're talking about.
Of training. So everything I pay sort of homage to Arthur Jones. It's all Nautilus, right? All brand new, Nautilus equipment there. And what you do, and we try to make it very, very safe and efficient for people, is we run people through a circuit, which is 10 machines. And it's one set till failure, slow, right? And no transition time. So 10 seconds and you're on the next machine. So by the time you're done, you've had a wonderful hypertrophy session, and you're gasping
and a cardio
for air.
session.
You're gasping. It is brutal. 2 to 3 times per week. And I trained that way for many years. I would say from the time I was 16 to the time I was in my 30s, before I really started getting aggressive with powerlifting. It's a very, very efficient way to train. And, I would say it's probably the safest way to train. Right, because everything is tracked for you, right? Obviously on tracks, right? So there's not a lot of, fudging that you can do. You really can't injure yourself, with high intensity training, even though it's very vigorous and it feels miserable. You feel like you're going to die. But
the joints are protected,
Absolutely. They're totally protected. And one of the things that we've also integrated there is that you go down the first row of machines, you're huffing and puffing, and then we have this really cool sort of high-tech brain trainer on the wall. And when you're under duress, you're doing...
Oh, you have to go and push the buttons, right?
Well, it's reaction time. There's a bunch of different programming montages. So it's reaction time, it's memory, and then, we'll shoot you back through after that 1 minute, test is done. We'll shoot you back through the other five sets, in other words, a row of 5 machines on the other side. So it's a total of 10. And for my special operations guys that come through there, we do what's called Kim exercises with them. If I'm involved in their training, sometimes they pull me over. So if we have a guy in there who's a SEAL, what we'll do is, in the SEAL teams, they have a box full of things, or a blanket covering a bunch of items. Right, so a box full of items or a blanket covering a bunch of items, and they pull one of the blankets over the top, and they show the operator, these 10 things, and they say you have 30 seconds, memorize them, right? Or open the box and show them 10 things. And you close the box, and then you go through the circuit, you do the brain training, you go back the other side, and then you got to name those 10 things on your by the time you return to sort of base. If that makes sense. So we're truly working.
That's crazy.
The mind and the body, which I think is really the way training should be done, right?
Man, I think I'm going to come down to where you're in. We're in
West Palm
Florida,
Beach.
right?
Yeah, West Palm Beach.
Yeah, I'm coming to West Palm Beach. You're going to put me through that, man. I want to do that.
You'll love it. Well, you'll hate me when you're going through it, but you'll love it.
But that's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah,
right. That sounds amazing. And the fact is, Dr. Osborne's a neurosurgeon, so he's all in with the neurology part of that too.
My favorite sport, my favorite Olympics is biathlon. For that exact reason. And I always tell Melissa, those guys and gals are the best athletes there are. It's true. The thing that if you've ever watched any documentaries on biathletes, they are so unbelievably impressive, and here's why. Sure, they have this amazing engine, so their endurance capacity is unbelievable, right? But not only do they have that, but what they have is this other unbelievable sort of exercise benchmark, which is it's truly uncanny. What they're able to do is when they stop and they lay down, on their stomachs, if they're not shooting upright, a lot of them are laying down, they are able to bring their heart rates down. Right. So say as an example, their heart rate is normally, it's probably like zone 2 type stuff for them when they're doing it, unless they're on like a sprint. This is probably zone 2. So they're 30 years old. So that would put their heart rate somewhere around, probably like 140 or so. That's 70, 80% of their max heart rate. What they're able to do is those guys are able to knock down their heart rates 50 to 60 beats per minute. Now, I don't know how much endurance training you've done, but a good barometer. It's insane. Okay, heart rate recovery is insane in those people. They're freaks. Okay, so you get on an ergometer, right, and you row. You row at steady state. So you row at zone 2, right, 70, 80%, whatever, 70, 75%, whatever. So for you, Bob, how old are you again?
51.
Right, you're 51. So I'm 53. So for us, that's like 120. Okay, so you go to 120, right, or 130, right? What are the chances after you stop rowing and sit there for 1 minute in the seat? Okay, that your heart rate is going to go down to 60. 0.
Oh, no.
Yeah, 0. No. Okay, and that is what they're able to do. right?
So
And
is that a vagal thing, or is that like
It is.
just you're so conditioned that the recovery is fast?
Right. So it's probably a little bit of both. In other words, their oxygen extraction at the skeletal muscle level is unbelievable. You know, their VO2 maxes are, 60, 70,
Ridiculous.
maybe even
Ridiculous.
higher than that. And they have a lot of vagal tone, as you had alluded to. That is correct. So, just so you know, or for the people who are watching out there, because I'm sure you have.
Yeah, sorry, we're geeking out, guys. Sorry, this is like
right.
you
Sorry,
get to.
but it's important. A good barometer of fitness is, forget about your resting heart rate. It's heart rate recovery, right? So a good barometer that people should shoot for, a good barometer, right, is 25 per minute. That's good. Okay, that's getting really good. These guys are 60. So it's absurd, and that's what allows them, to be able to, to target properly and not be bouncing all over the place, neither with their breath nor with their heart rate, because both of those are big factors in shooting, long range shooting.
Yeah, and some of them probably take some atenolol as they're doing it or
something. Yeah,
something.
The thing about it is that they test for atenolol, as you know.
Yeah, right.
It's banned. Yeah. Of course, it's banned.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
And for the viewers who don't know what that is, that's a beta blocker, and I can let Dr. Osborne talk about that a little bit if we want. But
basically, it just slows the heart rate down, right? So people, people that are non-competitive marksmen use it, hunters use it, snipers use it, because it slows the heart rate down. And when whoever's out there who's shot before knows that if your heart rate is beating fast, that rifle, as an example, that pistol is moving like this, and you're all over the place. So it also tends to minimize, so not only it lowers your heart rate, but it minimizes tremor, and it also has a calming effect. So public speakers, if they tend to get nervous, despite the fact that they may be experienced, they take beta blockers. A lot of them do.
Yeah, and it allows them to not have that sedation effect, that like a Valium or something would do. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Far less sedating.
Yeah, so this has been amazing. Like, what would you tell someone like me? Talk to Bob Gothier from 2019, right? Who just picked up your book. He's walking around Barnes and Noble with his kid, sees the book, and it's like, you know what? I got to make a change. What do you tell that person? What's the first step?
Listen, what I would tell you is Bob, read the book. Really, really, really try to understand what I'm talking about in the book, across the board. But the most important thing that you can do, that an individual can do, forget about the supplements, forget about the medications. Those things further accelerate the process, of course. But the most important thing you can do is become habituated to exercise, and in particular, strength training, right? You can't walk around the block and expect yourself to gain muscle. It's not going to happen. And I always tell people, walking does not supplant strength training, ever. The most important thing you can do as far as from the physicality standpoint, of your body, is to amass muscle. It's to amass protective muscle for a multitude of reasons. But then secondarily, or on equal plane, I would say, the most important thing that you can do is when you have, some sort of food in your hand, understand what the macronutrient content of that food is, at least on a rudimentary standpoint, okay? So what does that mean? Okay, well, I have a chicken breast in my hand. Well, what is that? Well, that's protein, right? Is that going to push my insulin levels up and make me unhealthy? Because all of these diseases are a product of high levels of inflammation and high levels of insulin. Those two things are often coupled together. So chicken breast. Nope, that's protein, and the skin maybe is a little bit of fat. Am I good? I'm good. Okay, now I have a vegetable, right? Like broccoli. Well, that's a low glycemic index carbohydrate. The glycemic index of broccoli may be, 10, 15, something like that. It's not going to drive your insulin levels up. Contrast that to something like Skittles or a Snickers bar, and the glycemic index, the glycemic index is 100. Right? So your insulin level is going to go straight up. And this is what I talk to people about when I'm in the clinic, their first time. They come in, they're obese, they don't understand what's going on. Right? If you just understand the macronutrient content of your food and understand what insulin does, insulin goes up when you have sugar, insulin stays down when you have proteins and fats. Okay, it may spike up a little bit with the protein. And insulin stays down when you're eating a low glycemic index carbohydrates. So understand the effects of the effects of your food on your insulin levels. And if you could just strive for a low insulin level at all times, right, you're going to lose body fat and you're going to be healthier. That's it. Okay, if you have high insulin levels, you're going to get fat and you're going to develop all of these other diseases, okay, because obesity is a gateway disease. So again, exercise, particular strength training, understand the macronutrient content of your food, and understand what insulin does, right? Excuse me, what insulin does and what drives insulin levels up. High insulin levels shuts fat burning. Low insulin levels keeps you burning fat. It's very, very, very simple. An easy way to remember that. Do I have some time, Bob?
Yeah, we have as long as you want to give us.
An easy way to remember that is, look, if you're eating lots and lots of sugar, right? What is your body doing? Your body's going, wow, this is like, it's feast, right? It's feast time, right? I'm going to store anything excess calorically, what I'm not instantaneously burning, right, in my muscles. I'm going to store anything extra as fat, right? Now, the opposite is true as well. When you have low insulin, your body's thinking, damn it, I'm starving. There's no sugar around. I'm starving. So what is it going to do? It's going to call upon your own fat stores, provide energy, right? And that's when you start losing fat. You're getting it from the fat around your waist to the fat around your butt or wherever your fat is, depending upon if you're male or female. Low insulin drives fat loss. High insulin, when you eat Skittles and Snickers, that makes you fat. If you just understand that one concept and you exercise, you're good. So in the clinic, what I will usually do is before I leave the patient, I'll say, we just gave you that lesson. I'm going to give you some scenarios. Can you go to Ruth's Chris and can you have a filet mignon with butter? Well, they look at me like, no, you can't have the butter. I go, why? Why can't you have the butter? Oh, it's fat. Fat doesn't make you fat. All you need to do is understand that the filet is protein. There's some fat in there, even though it's a lean piece of meat. And you can have the butter. Can you have the filet mignon with broccoli? Well, wait a minute. Broccoli is a carbohydrate. I can't have that. Well, why not? Well, broccoli is a low glycemic index carbohydrate, right? And our cutoff, by the way, between high and low, it's more aggressive than what you hear sort of out in the mainstream media. It's 40. So if you're eating carbohydrates that are lower than 40, glycemic index-wise, you're not driving your insulin levels up. You're not making fat. You're not turning off fat burning. You are actually continuing to burn fat. So you can have the filet mignon with the butter and broccoli. Now, of course, I switch it up. Can you have the filet mignon with butter and a baked potato? No, right? Because that's a high glycemic index carbohydrate. And what's going to happen? That's going to turn off fat burning, right? And you're going to amass fat during that meal. So remember, it's not the burger at McDonald's, okay, that kills you. It's the fries.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
That's what it is, right? Yeah, the burger is not the greatest for you because the bun is laden with sugar, right? And you shouldn't have bread, really. But the fries are going to kill you because they're high glycemic index carbohydrates, potato, and they're baked in horrible fat. And I mean horrible fat. It's like
Horrible,
the worst type of fat that you can be eating. They're horribly inflammatory for your body. It's if you want to go and if you just have to have something, go and have a burger, particularly without the bun. But if you have to have the bun, fine. But don't have the fries, right? Because that is what will kill you. Okay, so
yeah, for sure,
Bob. Just summing it up, it's exercise and understanding the macronutrient content of your food and what your food is going to do to your insulin levels. Now, let me give you one other little gem, if you will. One of the ways for people that are out there that so that they can sort of understand this is get a CGM. Get a Freestyle. Okay, so Abbott Labs makes something called the Freestyle Libre, and they're on the Libre 3 now.
Yeah, I used one when I first started. Now I don't feel like I need it that much anymore, but yeah.
That's right. Okay, so here's the Libre 3. It's a little sensor, right there, and it's about the size of maybe like a $50, and it sticks on, lasts for 14 days, and there's telemetry between that and your phone, right? And what that's going to do, all of the bodies, to kind of sample, not your blood, but basically
plasma, really, right?
Yeah, it's interstitial fluid, right? So it's some sort of derivative of blood. Okay, it's actually the water between the cells. Okay, which is being sort of irrigated by blood in the vasculature. This is just outside that. You're not putting this in an artery or a vein. Okay, and it's not so much the absolute number. I don't really care what the absolute number is because those things are not calibrated. We spoke to the Abbott engineers about them. They're not calibrated for non-diabetic people. Right? So if you're diabetic, sure, okay, I guess it's better, but it's not good to be diabetic.
It's work. Yeah.
But my point is that what you can do is when you have this thing on, right, and you're sort of not sure what happens to your blood sugar when you eat food, which is, again, that is a function of the glycemic index of your food. High glycemic index carbohydrates, sugar, drive sugar straight up. Low glycemic index carbohydrates, like broccoli, keep levels down, right? Keep sugar levels down, and by virtue, insulin levels down. So you can eat some food, and you can see what happens in 20 or 30 minutes to your blood sugar. If it goes up and it's through the roof, in other words, if your blood sugar has doubled, that is a high glycemic index carbohydrate, regardless of the baseline number, right? If it stays the same, right, about the same, doesn't really move, it's a low glycemic index carbohydrate. It's really simple, and if you just understand, okay, if it goes up, I'm making fat. If it stays the same or just goes up a little bit, I'm burning fat. It's just that simple. Notice I didn't say anything, Bob, about calories.
That's true.
Not one thing, because it's not about calories. It is to a degree, okay, but the majority of it is about insulin signaling. Okay,
yeah,
that's really what it's about. High insulin levels will kill you.
Yeah. One of the things that it did help me too is I noticed what exercise did to my blood sugar too.
Yeah.
And high intensity exercise increased my blood sugar transiently, but then it tanked it later.
That's the
the
most important thing. During that stress period or that eustress period,
it's
going to go up. Okay,
cortisol goes up, all that. Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
That's the body's response, right? But then, as you know, that muscle is going to act as a glucose filter. It's going to pull, that sugar out of the bloodstream, which is one of the reasons why it's so protective of the vasculature.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dr. O'Brien, one of my best friends is O'Brien, so that's
gotcha.
That's where
no
that's
problem.
But Dr. Osborne, thank you so much for your time coming in. I mean, you're a big inspiration to me getting started with my transformation.
Yeah, congratulations to you. I think that's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Good for you.
It's just a lot of work, a lot of discipline, and getting myself right with a doctor that would treat me, and that was a struggle in itself. And the fact is that this podcast exists because basically from the beginning, your book inspired me to make a change in my life.
I appreciate that, and thanks for for getting the message out there and being so motivated to deliver that. To deliver that message. People have told me, you gotta get on, you gotta start doing these podcasts. And I said, I don't know if I have the bandwidth between, I run a couple of different practices and I have, trauma calls. It's a little bit busy, but, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to have me on. Very much appreciate it. You're an inspiration.
Thank you. And, I got to tell you, with that, with everything I went through, I reeled my team in and their spouses, and we did a collective challenge 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And altogether, over 200 pounds were lost.
Oh, that's amazing. And
that was really awesome.
That's amazing. So, I will tell you, it is, health is contagious.
For sure, without a doubt. And that's what spurred Dennis, coming in and helping me out with this. And he went through his own transformation. Really proud of him too. And, amazing job, Dennis. And it's all due to Dr. Osborne,
Dr. Osborne, first of all, I've went through this the last 5 months and I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Consistency and my confidence has went through the roof. I feel really good about myself. What is amazing about this today is I have learned so many valuable lessons from you that'll help me understand what's going on with my body that much more. And you take your time to break it down. And I'm just so impressed that you consider all facets of the human being as you're doing what you're doing. And no wonder your success. Thank you in your busy schedule for etching out the time for us.
Of course.
And you are somebody that is clearly living at your apex and helping other people get there. And that's, as Bob says, that's why we do this.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. Yeah. And what we can do, with just a little bit of applied science is we can live. And I was just talking to somebody about a patient about this about 3 hours ago. I said exactly this. Look, independent of your chronological age, right? You can live an optimal existence and be as good, if not better, than you were when you're 21. All you need to do is just understand, follow the science, and your health will be yours, or optimal health will be yours. And you can do that, as far as I'm concerned, if you take really, really good care of yourself. And in particular, things like your joints are sort of, and pun intended, sort of mindful of your brain health, right? You're less likely to fall, which is a major cause of morbidity and mortality in people that are older than 50. Trust me, I know that for a fact, okay, because that's what I do for a living. If you just show your body the right signals, your body and your mind the right signals, okay, you can live, fully functional into your 80s, 90s. There's no reason why you can't. And as the technology improves and we learn more and more, it's only going to get better.
Yeah, I'll say one quick little thing in closing. I guess it was, when did I take the tumble? Was that back in March?
Yeah, March, yeah.
So I was actually texting and walking down my stairs at 4 a.m. I have a full pain cave in my basement, right? And I missed about 4 steps, hit my right knee on the carpet.
Yep.
Ended up with a close degloving injury that did not require surgery, but a lot of compression, a lot of rest, and I had some time off. But I was rolling around on the ground, and I was like, "This is how old people die," and I can't imagine what falling at 400 plus pounds would have been.
Yeah.
I would have broken my leg for sure.
Forget it. Yeah, forget it. You don't even want to go that route. I'll tell you. It's either you break a hip. I always tell patients, you break a hip, you're dead. So we're that's one of the other tests we do is we do a bone density test on everybody that comes through there because we're unapologetically aggressive about putting patients on hormones if their bone density is sort of falling off. So that's another thing, right? Do not fall. Okay, it may seem like a benign thing when you're 20 years old. Well, I'll just get as you get older, there's just less resiliency. You want to develop that resiliency or maintain that resiliency, but the tendency is to fall. And that's a product of sarcopenia, so muscle loss. That's also a product of brain health or lack thereof. So you've got to take care of your brain.
Mine was texting and walking, really.
Yeah. No, I get
in the
it.
dark,
But
but I can tell you, I was so grateful that I had gone through that challenge, that transformation, and I was able to heal. And I healed up. I mean, I'm back to 100% now.
Of course, of course.
But anyway, how can people find you, and how can people connect? And I can tell you to all the listeners out there, go and get his book, Get Serious. I mean, it's a great read. It's really accessible for anybody. I mean, I know I have a little bit of background in medicine and what have you, right? But it's a great read, and it got me spurred off, and I could do nothing but talk accolades. In fact, we're putting you in our book, with a site.
No, that's great.
You can have a drip.
I do appreciate it. What I'll do is I'm going to show you this because it's a little bit funny to spell, and that's a whole nother long-winded conversation. I'm going to put it in chat there. And that's the link. Our practice is called, I don't know if this comes across as backwards, they're Senolytics, Senolytix, and we're at senolytics.io. And I would encourage everybody to become familiar with that word, okay, except it doesn't end with an X, it ends with a C. And it's a sort of a play on that word, Senolytics, which has to do with drugs or agents. Some of them are supplements that actually remove senescent cells or old cells from the body.
Oh,
and that's a whole nother sort of rabbit hole that I'm way down. If you invite me back, I'll explain it. I'll explain to you, sort of what I'm doing in that regard. There's a lot to it.
Is that like a biologics thing or something like that?
Not so much. I'll throw one supplement out there to you. Okay. Which is
so this is like helps with autophagy and all of that.
So the senescent cells, these old cells, right? Just to be brief, right? They're accumulating in our body every day, right? And these cells they're secreting all this nasty stuff. So things that have funny names like interleukin 6, interleukin 1, matrix metalloproteinase, tumor necrosis factor, all things that heighten acceleration and accelerate the aging process by virtue of that. These are all inflammatory diseases, right? You can call it vascular disease, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. Cancer, diabetes, they're all inflammatory diseases. One of the ways that we can slow down the aging process is by removing these senescent cells. And there are a variety of ways, to do that, at least we think.
One of them men stuff or the
No, use this supplement called Fisetin, which I just texted over to you, and there's another one.
Nice.
And these are sort of natural, they're available anywhere. Quercetin is in apples. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, literally. It's probably because of the quercetin, but Fisetin is a close relative of quercetin, and those are two natural agents which will kill these senescent cells. But again, there's a lot more to it. Yes, you had spoken about autophagy. Yes, autophagy goes and gobbles up, these senescent cells. And one of the ways that we heighten autophagy is exercise, right? Yep. Eat cleanly, take your supplements, take rapamycin, which you probably have heard about, read about, right?
Yep.
And there are other agents that are senolytic agents, again with a C at the end. These are things that we hope our clinic will ultimately be able to bring to the community, the population at large, mainstream medicine. Right now, they're very, very much experimental, but nevertheless, we're working on some protocols in the clinic, which hopefully will allow us to address these senescent cells that are accumulating in our body.
Awesome stuff. We'll love to have you back at some point. I'll go.
Guarantee.
Yeah.
You let me know what you want to do, and I'm happy to to get on here. You guys are interesting guys, and ask a lot of good probing questions. We can do a whole thing on on hormone replacement if you want to talk. Male and female. I have no issue with that. Exercise, whatever you want. Supplements, it doesn't really matter. I love to come back on.
Oh, that'd be great.
You'd be honored.
Yeah. So Dennis,
First of all, keep changing lives. You're doing it every time. And as always, it's go time.